Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about a final basic step. When you have gone through the steps of identifying the clues, coming up with your own word, matching, and even finding an answer, you want to finally, once you come up with that answer, to plug that answer back in to the blank. So again, we're going to follow the basic steps, and then finally we're going to actually arrive at the answer and plug that answer back into the sentence. The question is maybe why? Well, this allows us to get a sense of the flow, the style of the sentence. And remember how I said never plug in the answer choices from the beginning? Well, for the most part, that rings true. You want to avoid doing that because that's where you get tricked. You always want to work through the sentence. And so this strategy of plugging in only happens at the very end after you've done the basic steps, after you've made sure that you understand the sentence and you've come up with your own word. So it's sort of a test. Does it sound right? Does it make sense? So let's run through this question. Poetically referred to as visita flora, or flower visitor by the Spanish, the hummingbird has the curious blank of having the fastest heartbeat of any extant vertebrae. You may not know what extant is, but remember, ignore words you don't know. Well, what does it have? It has this curious, well, it has the fastest heartbeat of any mammal or any vertebrae, almost any living thing. So it has the curious, well, maybe it has the curious reputation. So let's put our own word in there. It's known, or maybe you can even put renown. So the curious reputation of having the fastest heartbeat. Now, if you weren't able to come up with reputation or even renown, as long as you come up with the general sense of what that word is, you can even match that with the answers as well. But that's what we're going to do here. So this is, again, important for difficult questions, especially the idea of putting the word in at the very end. So the reputation here, does that mean requisite? So requisite, what does requisite mean? Well, requisite means something that's required. So we're looking for sort of renown. People know it as the fastest, not everyone obviously, but it's known as having the fastest heartbeat. So we get rid of requisite. What about distinction? So it has the distinction. Well, if someone has distinction, they're known as, usually in a positive way. And this hummingbird has a curious distinction of having the fastest heartbeat. So, well, yeah, maybe it could work. So we leave it there. Then we go to C, impediment. An impediment is something that slows you down. So are there any context clues here to show us that the hummingbird is slowed down because of its fastest heartbeat? No. Impediment is not holding, of course, the heartbeat that is not holding the hummingbird back. So impediment is out. Then we have ailment, which means illness. Again, fastest heartbeat doesn't mean illness. And that leaves us with an endowment. When you have something, that's called an endowment. You're endowed with an ability or a skill. So it sounds like endowment could work as well. The hummingbird has the endowment. So let's try this test now. Now that we followed the basic steps, we've arrived at our answer, or at least answers, let's now plug them back in. So poetically referred to, blah, 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 the hummingbird has the curious endowment of having the fastest heartbeat, or the hummingbird has the curious distinction. And you can see that, hopefully, that the distinction sounds a little bit more like it flows, especially in terms of reputation. Endowment doesn't quite mean reputation, so we can get rid of endowment. And therefore, distinction works best. Now, you can even try this plugging back in method as I did here with two possibilities. Or you could have gotten rid of endowment because you realized it didn't actually mean reputation or renown. And then you could have still put distinction in the end, just reading it, the sentence with distinction, just to make sure nothing was amiss. And we did that, and therefore we've come up with the correct answer. Again, it's important on more difficult questions as well, where there's a stylistic problem going on. So you want to definitely apply this when you feel like the question is difficult and not straightforward.